to Watch Your Assets, where we've got your money on our minds. I'm your host, Stephanie Bracken, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about some things to possibly consider when you're shopping for a financial advisor. This is a huge decision that you're going to make whenever you're taking your life savings, your nest egg, your emergency fund, whatever you want to call that. You're handing that over to someone else to professionally manage and to provide you with advice. And that is a huge decision, not something that you should take lightly. And I want to have you I want to talk about some things to maybe keep in mind whenever you're going through this process, because this can be a daunting process. You may not know what to look for in an advisor, and I hope that this is kind of a starting point for you for that. Everyone's going to be different. As I say every single episode, this is not one size fits all. Advisors are not one size fits all. So you have to find someone who is going to be aligned with your goals, your values, and I'm going to talk about some of these characteristics that financial advisors should have to best serve you and your family's needs. So a lot of the times whenever people are looking for financial advisors, they typically have a life event that happens, right? Whenever you're working and if all you have is your 401k and you're saving into your 401k, but that's about the only investment that you have, you might not need a financial advisor as you're working. The time for a financial advisor might come for you whenever it's time to retire. The average wealth management client is probably somewhere in their 50s, 60s, because that's the time whenever you might need some different approaches, some different ways to manage your money than what you were used to doing while you were working. That's not to say that's the only person who needs a financial advisor, though. Anybody can have a financial advisor. I think sometimes young people are afraid to talk to somebody because they think they don't have enough money to invest with an advisor, or they think that they don't need a lot of professional management, professional advice. I think the earlier you can plan for your financial future, the better. But it's going to be, again, totally dependent on you and your family. So if we're taking, the route of someone who's getting ready to retire, when you're saving into your 401k, that really doesn't take that much effort, right? You contribute with every single paycheck automatically. You don't even have to think about it. You've invested into something probably relatively aggressive, maybe on the, moderate side, and it's growing with the markets. And when you retire, you have this big pot of money now. And now that you're on the other side of retirement, you might want to think about moving it away from that 401k so that you physically own the money. And so when you do that, you have to roll it into an IRA so that there's no tax consequences. And you can manage that yourself, of course. You certainly do not have to use a financial advisor. If you are a do-it-yourselfer, if you like to do investments, if you like to day trade, if you're really into that world, then maybe you also don't need a financial advisor. But if you're looking for the advice of a professional who does this every day for a living and who can hopefully provide you some advice of things that maybe you didn't think about or you didn't know about, then that's where a financial advisor can come into play. They're there to, they're in the business of giving advice. And it's gonna, they're gonna probably be able to point out certain holes in your plan that you might not know existed, because that's not what you do all day. And that's totally fine. And that is not that's not a bad thing. It's just that professional wealth managers are there to provide that level of advice and knowledge to you. So let's talk about some of those things you might want to consider when you're shopping around, because again, this is a big decision. So in my eyes, one of the biggest, or maybe the most important thing to consider whenever you're looking for an advisor is, do you like and trust this person? People do business with people they like, know, and trust. And so if you don't feel like you can trust the person that you're sitting across from the table from with your life savings, then maybe that's not the right person for you. But if you think you have a good rapport with them, if they seem to understand you as a person, your personality, maybe you guys have similar interests, maybe you're of a similar, demographic where you can relate on that level, or you have specific hobbies that you can relate to. You like sports, you like fishing, whatever that is, you like art. If you can find some common ground, that's usually a good place to start because that builds up a good rapport with that person. If you don't, I mean, think of it like any of your other personal, romantic, business relationships. If you don't trust that person, how can you ever have a solid relationship with them? If there's always, even if you trust them 99% of the time, if there's a 1% doubt in your mind about the kind of person they are, that 1% exceeds the other 99%. So trusting and liking that person is huge. You want your advisor to make you feel comfortable, right? You want to feel like you're not being pressured into doing something you don't want to do. You want to feel like that person has your best interests in mind. That's called being a fiduciary. So that word gets thrown around a lot in this industry. So that's an important question to ask your advisors is, are you a fiduciary, and in what capacity do you serve as a fiduciary? What kind of relationship do we need to have for you to act in a fiduciary capacity? Now, we have moral standards that we are supposed to uphold at all times, and in my eyes, being a fiduciary is one of those things. The CFP board has slightly different thoughts and recommendations on when you have a relationship that requires you to be a fiduciary versus not. But in my eyes, putting the client's best interest ahead of your own is the foundation of this relationship. We're not supposed to make blanket recommendations of one size fits all because that's what, is most profitable or is the, most popular thing to do at that time. We are supposed to do what is best for you. And that's why we want to get to know you. We want to understand your goals. We want to understand your plan. We want to understand your family dynamic, what you want to have happen in the future. What's your legacy? What are your hobbies? How do you want to spend your time in retirement? These kinds of things are going to be really important for us to know so we can come up with solid recommendations that are specific and personalized to you and put your best interests in mind. So that's being a fiduciary, right? The other thing you might want to consider is, do they have credentials? If you're looking for a financial planning type of relationship, working with a CFP might be a good thing to have in your life because they have a certain set of standards that they are supposed to uphold in the ethics department. In an education sense, we have to do continuing education constantly to maintain a CFP designation. And we are, when you have this designation, it kind of puts your thought process a little higher in terms of looking at a client situation holistically. So that's what I like to do, is I like to look at people's situations holistically, because if we just look at your investments, that's great. And if that's all you need an advisor to do is manage your investments, that's wonderful. That's a very simple relationship. But if you want us to truly be fiduciaries, that's where the more holistic mindset comes into play, because not only are your investments part of this, but your taxes are part of this. Your estate is part of this. Your legacy, your retirement plan, your cash flow needs, all of this funnels together to make a holistic plan. And if one of these areas is weaker than the other, that's where we might need to address certain things to make sure that everything works together. Or if you want a tax advisor, and you have a complicated tax situation, maybe you need a CPA. That's going to be another thing. If you have a simple return, you have one W-2, and you just need to have your taxes filed, you may not need a CPA. But if you have trusts and you have a business and you have other complex situations with your taxes, a CPA might be a better resource because, again, they've taken their knowledge to the next level and have shown and demonstrated that they wanted to pursue a higher education to provide better service for their clients, to provide more holistic services to their clients than just, your garden variety tax preparer. There's lots of other designations that are available in the financial industry. You also can look at FINRA, F-I-N-R-A. You can look at broker check to see if the person that you're interviewing is in good standing with FINRA and the SEC. That's our regulatory bodies. So if anyone has a disciplinary hearing against them for any reason, that will be part of the broker check. So you'll be able to kind of do almost a background check on these people that you want to sit down with before you even meet them. That's public knowledge. That's not, something that is kept secret. That is, you have to disclose whenever you have some kind of disciplinary hearing. It goes on almost a permanent record in the financial world, and it's going to stick around. And so you want to know who you're dealing with, right? The other thing to maybe think about is what kind of demographic of client is this person serving? So a lot of the times people will advertise what kind of demographic they want to serve, whether that's, we work with a lot of teachers. We work with a lot of people who work in blue collar jobs like Cleveland Brothers, which is a Caterpillar dealership. Down in our Arlington, DC branch, we work with a lot of federal employees. Some people exclusively work with healthcare workers, teachers. There's a lot blue collar, or white collar professionals. Any demographic, if you work for a large company, you probably can find a financial advisor that specifically services your demographic and is going to know your benefits inside and out. Because again, this is really going to affect what kind of services you might need. If you have questions about your specific health plan, you'd probably want a financial advisor who already knows about the benefits you have. And the same thing with your 401k. We know that in the federal government, they match 5%. And you have all of these other benefits. You have federal health insurance. You can get a federal long-term care policy. There's lots in your pensions. There's a lot of different moving parts with those types of jobs that are very complex a lot of the times. Even teachers with your pensions, those can be really complicated to understand. And so when you work with an advisor who has taken the time to understand those benefits, they can be a good resource for you too, to help you navigate something that's otherwise probably pretty complex. And I think a lot of employers have to offer some kind of benefits education class, but even then, you still might not understand your benefits completely. And as you're transitioning into retirement, that's probably going to be something you're going to want to figure out because you want to understand your options. And a financial advisor, again, who understands that demographic and understands your options. Let's say, for example, a pension. Some companies offer a pension that you can take as one lump sum that you can roll over and kind of take away from the plan versus getting an annuity every single month. Sometimes you can do both. And it just depends. What's better for one person might not be better for the other person. So that financial advisor can help you navigate and compare and contrast what is better for me to do. And along those same lines with the demographic conversation is also, are you looking for someone who shares similar values to you? Sometimes people will advertise themselves as Christian-based advisors, Jewish advisors, whatever your religious beliefs are. If they're ethical, where they like to invest in, things that have ethical benefits, things like, PETA, something with the environment, green energy, things like that. That can be, if that's what's important to you and that you share the same values as your advisor, that's another thing to explore with them. And again, if they don't advertise it specifically, when you meet with them, you definitely want to ask, right? Because otherwise, how will you know? So I think it's important to maybe come in with a list of questions that you can ask this person that helps you determine if this person aligns with the things that are most important to you. If that's not the thing that matters to you and you are more focused on the specific demographic of client that advisor serves, that is totally fine too. So it's, again, totally dependent on what you think is most important. In the financial world, there's a couple different ways that advisors are compensated too. So this can also be part of your conversation because you may want to know how this person is getting paid, right? That's a big part of this too. There's typically 3 different ways that people are compensated in this business. You can be commission-based, you can be fee-based, or you can be fee-only. When you're commission-based, typically that lends itself to brokerage business versus advisory business would be a fee-based or a fee-only advisory practice. Commission-based, typically on brokerage accounts, at least at our firm, brokerage accounts are no fee to the client. We get paid by the institutions that we invest with. When we have a large pot of money to invest across a lot of different clients, we have the ability to get customized products made that fits the mold that we are trying to accomplish, whether it's growth, whether it's income, whether it's, something more conservative, something like that. We can take a pot of money across many clients and tell JP Morgan, for example, we can tell JP Morgan, hey, we want a product that does X, Y, and Z for this specific pot of money. What do you got? And then they, among other banks or other institutions, will come back to us and say, here are the rates that I have for this specific need that you have. And when we do business with those banks or those institutions, the bank or the institution pays us directly. So it's no fee to you, the client, and some people appreciate that. So that's one model. Fee-based and fee-only are a little more probably recognized in the industry. This is where your advisory services come into play, where maybe you are charged 1.5% across all of your investments, no matter the size of your investment. Maybe sometimes there are break points where after you invest $1 million, maybe your 1.5% fee becomes 1%. After $2 million, maybe it's 0.75%. Every firm is different with that and their break points. If they offer that, some people might just do a flat fee across the board. We take a very personalized approach with that, and we want to ensure that you are not getting hit with a ton of fees. So we try to be fee conscious where we can. But those types of business models with fee only, fee based, when the accounts are doing well, when you're making money, that's when we make money, right? So that's kind of the difference between those things. Is commission-based is a little more upfront on the compensation side of things, whereas fee-based, fee-only is kind of ongoing. Every quarter, every year, we get a certain percentage of your accounts. Typically, those come right out of your accounts, and you don't have to write checks to the institution or the advisor, but those are things they'll come out of your account every month, every year, or every quarter, every year. So, and the difference between fee-based and fee-only, there are only certain fees that you're allowed to charge people that allows you to be considered a fee-only advisor versus fee-based. There's a little more wiggle room in the fee-based world, and fee-based is probably the most common, I would say, advisor or advisory model, because there's, again, a little more flexibility and range with the types of fees that can be assessed to clients' accounts. So that's something to really take into account, because you want to know, of course, where your money is going, right? So that's part of it is your fees. So someone being extremely transparent about their fees is going to be huge. If someone seems like they're trying to withhold information about their fees, I mean, you're supposed to be transparent about your fees. That's one of the things that we try to do is be transparent, because we want you to know what you're getting into whenever you invest with us. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just want being transparent is one of the things that helps to build trust, right? So knowing how you're compensated and being able to almost select the type of relationship you want to have in that sense can be really helpful as well. There's kind of back to what I was saying before about being a CFP or having some higher credentials, is what types of services does the advisor offer? Do you just want someone who manages investments? If you do, that's wonderful, but just know that if you have questions that are outside of the investment world, they might not be able to answer those questions because that's not the type of relationship that you have with them. So if you want someone who offers more holistic services, YTS, for example, we try to be a one-stop shop to have all of your needs met in one place under one roof. So if you have tax questions, we can answer tax questions, or we can at least refer you to a tax professional to get your more complex questions answered in the tax realm. If you have estate planning questions, we can refer you to estate planning attorneys that we work with. And retirement planning, cash flow management, your financial plan in general. If you want an advisor who does financial planning, who does retirement planning, you might want to look again at a CFP or a firm that offers just more than advisory or investment management services. So that's something to consider too. Perhaps another thing you might like or not like is what kind of tech stack does that company or that advisor offer? Are you more paper focused? Do you like to receive statements in the mail? You like to see any reports on paper? You like to keep those on hand in a safe? Or are you more digital and tech savvy? Asking those types of questions can lead to deeper conversations. If you like to go online and look at the performance of your accounts on a day-to-day basis, having that on paper isn't going to reflect as accurate of numbers as it would if you were looking online at your accounts. So if you like financial planning and you want to look at your financial plan, ask if your advisor has financial planning software that you can access, any kind of client portals that you can access where you get to see and be a little more hands-on with your money. That can be a really great thing to keep in mind as well. So it's all about, again, it's all about you and what you want. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? And if your advisor checks all the boxes except one, and maybe it's not the biggest priority in the world, then great. If they don't check off the box of being trustworthy, then maybe you need to find somebody else, right? But if they only deal with technology and you like paper, and that's going to be a huge issue for you, then maybe you also need to go find someone who will accommodate that need or that request. So totally personalized to you. And at the end of the day, it might even just come down to a gut feeling, right? It might just be, I don't know what it is about this person, but I really like them. And I don't care, if we don't, always see eye to eye, but I know they're going to tell me the truth. That's the kind of person you might want in your life, right? The person who isn't afraid to tell you the facts and to say, hey, I think you're on an okay path, but I think we can make your situation better by doing X, Y, and Z. And here's what that might look like in terms of a financial plan or an investment proposal. And here's how we think we could put you in a better situation. That's the kind of person you probably want, is not somebody who just sugarcoats things, is who, does it in a tactful way, but tells you the things you need to hear, things that might be uncomfortable, but it's important conversations to have, because if you don't get that advice from an advisor, first of all, we're not doing our jobs as your advisor and as a fiduciary, but also it's doing you a disservice, right? It's if we tell you everything is sunshine and rainbows, but we know in the back of our minds it's not, and we need to actually have a hard conversation with you, we want to do that, right? We don't want to just pretend like everything is hunky-dory. We're not doing our jobs if we do that. So again, it is a lot to consider, and at the end of the day, it totally is up to you. So if you have questions about the types of services that an advisor offers, definitely do your research on them. Again, BrokerCheck is going to be a great place to go. You can search if you want a CFP professional. The CFP board has a list of all of the CFP designation holders, where you can search and kind of filter out, I want to work with someone who specializes in divorcees. I want someone who specializes in widows. I want someone who specializes in estate planning. You can go on the CFP board's website, find advisors in your area that offer that need, that service model for you that best fits your lifestyle and your needs. So again, a lot to consider, but it's not meant to be a daunting process. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be, easy, more or less. We want it to be a smooth process. We want you to feel at ease. There is a lot of jargon that gets thrown around in the industry that can be very intimidating. So if you find someone who can keep things high level and explain things to you in a way that makes sense, don't be afraid to ask questions. Everybody wants to help. And that's kind of, we get in the business because we want to help people. And so it just so happens that we offer financial services, but we want to help people. And so if you don't know the kinds of questions to ask, or if you don't ask those, you know the questions to ask, but you don't ask them, we can't read your mind, right? So we want to know the things that are on your mind. We want to stop the meeting, say, hey, I don't understand what's going on here. And then we can take a step back and say, okay, let's run this back and let's figure out where the disconnect is, and get you, understanding what we're talking about, because it's intimidating. So all in all, huge decision, and something that's not to be taken lightly, but we can certainly help you navigate that, and we want to be that resource for you, to be the voice of reason, to help you get on, a good path towards your financial future. And if you want more information about our firm and our resources, our services specifically, you can give us a call at 724-733-4334. Visit ytswealth.com. This is Watch Your Assets. Follow on all social media platforms, and we will see you on the next one.